Dr. Olivia Schwartz and Mr. Schwartz, Dr. Lowry. I'm going to call him Mr. Lowry. They are professionals. Dr. Schwartz is an educator from Maryland. She is from right here in Pembroke, from the Hopewell community. She is an alumni. Both are alumni of UNCP. And she has done incredible research on many Lumbee families and our history and records. But for today, she's going to talk about the Lowry. They're both going to talk about the Lowrys. But what's wonderful about their research, and what I love, and as you know, amateur genealogist, informal historian for right now, is that they went to the archives for many years, all over everywhere, and they hunted down every single lead. And if they didn't hold it in their hand, then it's not in their research. So they've seen it, they felt it, they've read the documentation, so everything is primarily sources. So where we have the advantage of being behind computers these days in Ancestry and pulling up things online, the Schwartzes have put boots on the ground and traveled not only in the United States but also in Europe, uncovering our ancestors. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Mr. and Mrs. Schwartz.
Thank you. I get to make the slides go back and forth and talk a little bit. Can I have 2 minutes more time before she starts? Okay, she's half my size, Paul. Okay. I grew up in Laurinburg. Anybody know where Laurinburg is? Okay. How many in here are not Lumbee? Only 3? 4. Okay, 4. Miscounting. Come on in, lady. I got 2 minutes just to talk. Okay. Steve, stand up back there. Okay, we just stand up. That's a tall man in here. He's the tallest Lumbee I've seen. How do you know you took Lumbee?
I'm sorry?
How do you know you're Lumbee?
My family told me I was.
Okay, that's right. That's how you find out you're Lumbee. It's in your heart, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, Miss Lowry, it's in your heart, isn't it? Okay. Keep standing up. I got to talk about it. They brought me from Laurinburg to play basketball here. Okay. My wife's short, but I'm tall. Okay. Steve is standing up, but he's a Bell. Is that right? Olivia, wasn't your grandma a Bell?
But I'm related to Bells.
Okay, all right. I knew there was some relationship. See, the Lowrys are connected to everybody, aren't they, Bob? Okay. Steve, your father was
Yes.
Ronnie,
and Ronnie is,
the son of Buddy and Sarah Bell.
and I played basketball with Buddy. And I told you the story. Can I tell the story about Buddy? Because you own it. You're a Lumbee, and you own the story that I have. We played basketball outside of, played McCray Eagles, the semi-pro team. We beat them, by the way. Buddy was the center, and I was the power forward, okay? And we had some other guys, white guys, that were around too. Okay. It's hard to say white guy, isn't it? I'm white. Okay. All right. So that night we won the game, but the place was packed with Boy Scouts. And so they wanted us to sign autographs. We were Indians. It said across my chest, brave. That's true, Lou.
I know.
So Steve, so I look at Buddy and I said, Buddy, what are you going to write down? He says, I'm going to write down Chief Bell. Your grandfather was Chief Bell. And I said, well, Buddy, what should I say? I said, nobody will believe I'm Chief Schwartz. How about Chief Tommy? And he said, yeah, that'll work. And we came home. to Lumbee country. This is Lumbee country right here. How do you know? I graduated right where I'm standing. Now wait a minute, you just say, how is that possible? Okay, this is Old Main.
This is auditorium.
Don't forget it's Old Main, that's part of your heritage. Yeah, it's in the heart. Are you ready, Luke? Wait a minute, let me tell one more time. Thank you, Steve. I come from Laurinburg. Okay, I grew up in the Scottish community. I grew up on McLaurin Avenue, and there was an English person on that street. I don't know how they got on there in the Schwarts. They were Sanfords. Anybody ever heard of Terry Sanford?
Yes.
Miss Sanford was our first grade teacher. That was the lady called you Tommy's wife.
Right.
Okay.
I know.
I grew up there in Laurinburg. Okay. Now I knew about Lumbees. Anybody in here is an Oxenine? Oh, there's an Oxenine. You know Ray Oxenine?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm gonna tell stories about him too. But he owes me a quart of milk. Okay, there's a story behind that. Okay, well, I grew up. Miss Sanford was my first grade teacher. I was 7 years old, and she said something that was very important. She said, "There's only going to be that you should only have one water fountain." Now think about that just a second. One water fountain. Laurinburg had two. The natives over in Laurinburg, my buddies, Grady Chavis, Harold Locklear, you want me to keep going? They all went to school with me. They were on the basketball team. Now down here, where Ray Oxenine went, they had their own schools. And you know that. This is back in 1955. So, when I was 7 years old, Miss Sanders said there only should be one water fountain. Now, Laurinburg had two. Okay. I come to Pembroke, I went to Presbyterian Junior College, and they had two. You know what I'm talking about? I'm talking about race. Okay. I come to Pembroke, there's only one. Think about that just a second now. You folks have it right.
Here.
There's only one race down here.
Absolutely.
Right? There's only one race. And it's not white, it's not black, it's not Indian, it's Lumbee. Is that right? Olivia, I'm always ready. Okay. So I go from Laurinburg with two to Presbyterian Junior College at two. I come to Pembroke, there's only one because the people are united. This is 1950. Steve, what year did he play? 1950. You don't know your history. Learn your history. 1958, 59. I also saw a Ku Klux Klan rally and W.D. Oxenine and so forth, but that's another story. But once again, only one. Now I go to Lumberton and work a year. How many water fountains? Three. How many bathrooms for natives? None. How many for black folks? None. Okay. So you know where we are. Did I use more than 2 minutes?
Yes, I think it's like 2 plus a 0.
Whoa, what I say? Let me get back to the beginning. All right, I'm sorry, I got so carried away, I went through all these things.
Mr. Schwartz, if you would indulge us in like just another 2-minute story, which I think is very powerful. I hate to put you on the spot. Would you tell the story about when you got the job at Lumberton?
Oh, Lord, you all didn't
challenge you. Just, I think it's important to challenge you about the wedding announcement that was published in the paper, or the engagement announcement.
Oh, you
And how
want
you
that
end up-
story,
yeah.
okay.
And
The Reader's Digest version.
That'll be enough. huh?
And that'll be, okay.
Okay, she controls me, otherwise I got all kind of theories about Lumbee.
Okay, your engagement story. You're at work.
Oh,
Your boss
okay.
comes to you and says, I saw
was-
in the paper.
I'm working at Lumberton High School, okay? Believe that or not, they hired somebody from Pembroke to come and work in Lumberton. In fact, they wanted me for some reason. And when I went there, I did basketball for them, you know. I taught Toonie Brooks what he knows. He's got a building named after him now. So it's now, let's see, let me get my thoughts together. He surprised me now. Okay, it's April, and of course that's when you renew your contracts. And so they called me in to renew my, Mr. Randall was the principal. So I go in, Mr. Randall, and I said, I want a raise, right? You know, and I wasn't making enough. I think I was making $3,300 back then. That wasn't enough for me. And I said, I want a raise. And he said, you got it already, Tom. We're going to give you 15. Did you know that those Lumberton people gave the teachers money? Okay, out of your pocket, by the way?
Yes.
Okay, right, okay, and he said, yeah, you're gonna get your raise and all, and you'll now be able to teach trigonometry and some other subjects. And I said, fine, I'm a basketball player teaching trigonometry, okay? All right, I said, fine, okay. So he kept talking, and he said, but final say is over in Mr. Lowry's office. He's the superintendent. Did you know they had superintendents for?
Absolutely.
Yeah, you remember that? Okay.
Yeah.
Why do you want me to tell this story?
Well, didn't they?
I'm getting ready. Okay, Olivia, I'll get there. Okay. So I go over to see Mr. Lowery. And Mr. Lowery says to me, Tommy, you get your $1,500, you get your salary and all, you'll be teaching trigonometry. You've got an excellent rating this year, you did an excellent job coaching, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, fine. And then he said to me something that caused me to stand up. He said, you can't marry that Indian. What do you think I did?
You're a Indian.
You think I did, Cole? Walked out. No, I didn't. I told that son of a gun. I'll tell you exactly what I said. But the thing is, see, that guy didn't realize he had just committed suicide. Mrs. Weinstein was where I stayed. You know Mrs. Weinstein?
Yes.
How about David?
Good friend.
Okay? She thought I was her son. Okay? And Hector McLeod was, and come on in, lady, I'm just talking, nothing started yet.
It needs to end pretty soon.
Okay? But, so Hector McLean was involved in it too, and so you had Mrs. Weinstein called up Hector McLean. I know this is the way it worked because the next day Hector McLean came to see me. You don't want me to tell him about going up and talking to Waltz, do you? I told him that story. Now I'm going to tell that story, okay? I had a job in my possession. That was on a Wednesday. By Monday, I had another job in Maryland. That's how I got to Maryland, okay? Through Waltz Mann. He's a good friend. But that guy got fired in 6 weeks, and part of it was because of what happened to me. Those folks thought that I was going to stay. I told her about that 2 years after we were married. You ready? Wait a minute, I'll get there, Libby.
Backward, who's going forward now?
What do I need to do? I need to
Here, I'll get you
fast
there.
forward. I'm sorry, I'm getting there.
Maybe she could,
There you
Oh, by
go.
the way,
okay. That's
You recognize that symbol? Huh? That was taken down at Harper's Ferry by Adolph Dahl and myself. Adolph and I were friends, okay? Adolph and the state used to pile all kinds of stuff in there on the graveyard back in the 50s and 60s. And that's where that came from, and I held on to that. I thought that would be important someday. Are you ready, Olivia?
Yes. The Lowry family tree. There are some limits on the Lowry family tree. Is this good?
You can pull it closer a little bit, just a little bit.
Limits on the Lowry family tree. The researchers used only federal records, state records, county records, manuscripts, and private papers for the documented entries on this site. The Lowry family branches will be limited to Root James Lowry through the Abner Lowry branch. And two members of the branches include Henry Berry Lowry, and I imagine many of you have heard of him already, and the Reverend D.F. Lowry. The presentation is for those who are Lumbee or are interested in the genealogy of the Lumbees who live in the area of the Lumber River in south central North Carolina. Now, on earlier maps, the Lumber River was known as the Lumbee River. The river, which is a branch of the Little PD River, flows through the North Carolina counties of Hoke, Scotland, Robinson, and Columbus. Early surveyors and settlers called it Drowning Creek. Native Americans were the first settlers there as early as, and this blows my mind, 20,000 BC. At least by the 1700s, and probably before, the river and swamps were the home of an amalgamation of Indian tribes. The earliest European settlers in that area found Indians who spoke English and were farmers. Among the people were those with blue eyes and who had obviously mixed with the Europeans. The descendants of these same people are living in the area of the Lumber River today. Their name, Lumbee, was officially adopted in 1953 from the early maps of the original name of the river, Lumbee.
The North Carolina Lumbee Act of 1953 was designed and brought forth by the Lumbee Brotherhood of 1951 and 52. The General Assembly of North Carolina do enact the Indians now residing in Robinson County and adjoining counties of the North Carolina originally found by the first white settlers on the Lumbee River in Robinson County and claiming joint descent from remnants of earlier American colonies and certain tribes of Indians originally inhabiting the coastal regions of North Carolina shall from and after ratification of the act be known and designated as the Lumbee Indians of North Carolina and shall continue to enjoy the rights, privileges, immunities enjoyed by them as citizens of the state as now provided by law and shall continue to be subject to all obligations and duties of citizens under the law. The Lowrys are Lumbees. Now this was determined, the Lumbee Brotherhood was made up of ministers and several of the prominent people. That's how the Brotherhood was formed. They elected D.F. Lowry as the spokesperson for them. That's who carried that to the state. When they finished carrying it to the state, they went on to the Federal Act of 1956, 3 years later. By the way, some of you are taking pictures and so forth. Olivia has a website, and she'll give you a card that'll take and show you all about what she's talking about today. She's got all kinds of stuff. She even had a, what was the, okay, Miss Nancy is somewhere else. Miss Nancy, did you pull that, little paper that had to do with the turpentine thing off the
In
internet?
your folders.
Yes, in your folders, I believe. That's a story in itself. I only went to Claxton because they had fruitcake. Okay. All right. Quit laughing at me, hon. It's true. You know that. Okay. Now, hold on now, just a second. The Lumbee Act, also known as H.R. Bill 465770. You always got to have a number, right? Okay. Passed by the Congress in late May of 1956 as a concession to political lobbying and signed by President Dwight D. Eisenhower, designated the Lumbees as Indian people.
How many of you knew that?
Yeah, okay. Now, and they all know it because they're still trying to get recognized. It was held but full recognition as a tribe has been agreed by the Lumbee leaders. The Lumbee Act designated that the Indians of Robinson and Hope in Scotland and Cumberland counties as the Lumbee Indians of North Carolina. At least you got a name. They now know you exist. Someday you'll get it full recognition. I hope it's in my lifetime. Olivia, you want to talk about the spelling?
Yes, as you see on the screen, there are several spellings of the Lowry name. And Lowry is an old Scottish name for fox. And it also means a crafty person, and I think we have quite a few of those. And in my family, though, we spell our name as you see printed there on the last line, capital Lowry.
Tell us about the root.
Well, the first Lowry in Robeson County was around 1767. It was then called Bladen County. And in our family was James Lowry, a landowner and the root of the Lowrys of Robeson County, then called Bladen County.
Do you know about Bladen County? Did you know that 54 counties came from Bladen County? At that time, in 1770 to 1772, Bladen County went all the way to Asheville, North Carolina. Okay, and that's kind of interesting. Now, in 1770 and 1772, James Lowry received patents. Not only was he the root, he was owner of a lot of land. He had 1,000 acres of land in Bladen County. Welcome, buddy. I pull for Washington on off days. Okay. I'm sorry, folks. All right. Now, you're going to see this. Thank you very much. Okay, good. Okay. Now, if I were in a classroom, I'd scold him. Welcome. You missed all the fun. My wife keeps trying to straighten me out. Okay. In 1770 to 1772, James Lowry, you know, he and Archibald Gilchrist were buddies. That's the reason he got so much land. Archibald Gilchrist was the, he worked for Charles II. No, and I think that was Charles II. Anyway, he was, when Archibald Gilchrist sold land, he got land. Now, when the first Lowry showed up, he already knew who Archibald Gilchrist was. So, and how do I know that? I can prove that through records, okay? The patent records and so forth. Now, down the creek, Drowning Creek, and no, is that what it's called, Drowning Creek? Mm-hmm. How far does Drowning Creek go?
Yeah,
Yeah, you're going towards Charleston, is that what you're doing?
it goes to Columbus County.
Which way?
Columbus.
Goes down to Georgetown.
It's east of Bladen.
All right, well, how far north does it go?
I say Moore County.
We're in Moore County. See, that was Bladen County back then.
Uh-huh.
Did you know that the Lumber River was considered, anything west of there was considered Indian country?
No.
You didn't? Well, up until that time, it was. Okay, Drowning Creek was an important, the guy talked about boundaries yesterday. I got excited about that, boundaries, okay. Okay, but down on Drowning, he sold 300 acres. You know, he had plenty of that land, so he sold 300 acres off of Drowning Creek and part of Raft Swamp. We'll come back and talk about that. Olivia, you want to tell us some more? You want to tell us about James Lowry's will? We're going to jump from 1770 all the way up to 1810. We're jumping now, so you guys jump with us.
His will was probated March 13th, 1810, and he had sons. He had William, Thomas, James. He also had daughters, Mary and Celie. Now the state of North Carolina, Robeson County, in the name of God, amen. James Lowry of the county and state aforesaid, though weak in body, yet of perfect mind, a memory blessed by God, do this 13th day of March in the year of our Lord 1810, make this my last will and testament as follows. First, I recommend my soul to Almighty God and my body to the earth. First, give and bequeath to my loving wife the plantation now live on and, but something's missing. Plantation I now live on, and the Negroes, Peter, Dick, Beat, Fanny, Bob, and all the lands in my possession. But 120 acres that my son lives on. Also 100 acres that my son William lives on. During her natural life and after her death to my son James Lowry, I also give and bequeath to my son William Lowry the plantation he now lives at and all the cattle and hogs in his possession at this time. I also give and bequeath to my son Thomas Lowry 120 acres of land that he now lives on. I also give and bequeath to my daughter Mary the Negroes Violet and Harry. I also give and bequeath to my daughter Celie the Negroes Jenny and Beverly. I also desire that all the stock of cattle, hogs, harness, and sheep remain on the premises. And if either of my daughters marry during their mother's life, to divide as she thinks proper. And this was signed, sealed, and delivered in the presence of the names that you see listed there: W. McNeil, Neil McNeil, and Vinay Locklear.
Now, James had to sign with an X, Liv, and I messed up there, folks. Okay, that PowerPoint presentation, I didn't allow enough up. Okay, but she's going to take it from there.
All right, now James Lowry was an educated man, but he had a disability at the time of his will, and he couldn't sign his will. So he made his mark X, as you see there. Now Betty Locklear married James Lowry's son William. Her father, Vinay Locklear, signed that will. The families were said to have been very close. Vinay Locklear may have been a patriot during the Revolutionary War. William Lowry was a patriot and given a pension for life for being wounded in the Revolutionary War. James Lowry is the root of 5 branches of the Lowry tree. Only one, the William Lowry branch, will be discussed today.
Okay, you notice that she picked, yesterday, Melinda picked up on one of the others. Okay. Let's take a look at the William Lowry genealogy branch. Now, Alan Lowry was William Lowry's son. Alan Lowry branch will be the only branch that will be in the presentation. The term mulatto was officially used as a racial designation in the United States Census from 1850 to 1930. Now, up till that point, they were called free persons or people of color. Okay, both of those were not good for the Lumbees. Okay, and it says here by definition, at least in Robeson County and the U.S., a mulatto is a person who has white and black parents, and that ain't so here.
Right.
You know, it may be partial, but it ain't so here. Yeah.
Sorry, can I chime in on that? So mulatto is Spanish for indigenous and white. It basically meant that when the Spaniards were coming through and fathering children and also acquiring lots of venereal diseases, that's a whole other story.
Okay, we
They-
have 2 minutes on that now.
I'm sorry. So that's what mulatto means. And then it ended up picking up with African Americans much later, but it always meant, even in Mexico and South America, indigenous and white.
Libby, you want to look at the 1850 census and tell us about what's going on with the Allen Lowry family?
Yes, the William Lowry genealogy branch is my branch from James Lowry's tree. Allen Lowry was William Lowry's son. Allen Lowry's branch will be the only branch that we'll be discussing today in this presentation. The term, it was just, we just went through that, the term mulatto was officially used as a racial designation in the United States Census from 1850 to 1930. And by definition, as you see there, at least in Robeson County in USA, it says here, a mulatto is a person who has a white and a black parent. In 1850 census of Robeson County, Allen Lowry's farm family is listed as follows. Allen Lowry was 55. He was a carpenter at that time, and he had personal property of $334. And at that time, that was a fortune. That was a lot of money. And Mary Polly Combo was his second wife, and she was 40 at that time. And then the youngsters, there was Oro, who was 16, James was 13, Calvin was age 12, and Thomas was 10, Stephen was 8. And in the red print, as you see there, Henry Berry was age 7. And I imagine many of the Lowrys here and other people have heard of Henry Berry Lowry. That's the one. Caroline was 3, and Sally was 2. And Benjamin was 40. Now that's a little bit out of whack there. But Benjamin was a farm worker. He was staying with them to help out on the farm.
Now you realize that only the people that lived on Allen Lowry's farm would be in the census. There's some others that are not there. Okay, to move on, let's take a look at the Allen Lowry's children. Now, even this guy and I had a discussion about the death of, he thought that Patrick Lowry, from your family, Nancy, was the oldest, but that's not true. Sinclair was. Where's the guy that did that? He's not here. Okay, there he is. Okay, did we get it right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, got it right. Okay, Sinclair Lowry was born first. Patrick, I think Patrick may have been, you know, there's a bunch of preachers in the Lowry family. Patrick Lowry, there was a circuit rider that came through, they had a circuit rider that come through the Lowry community down there, and they ended up being preachers. And because of Chafin, I believe is his name. Okay, now we had Sinclair, Patrick, Purdy, James, William, Calvin, Thomas, Sally Jane Lowry, Ransom. Over here? Is that you? That's not your guy, is it?
That's mine.
Oh, it's hers. Okay. Stephen Lowry, Henry Berry Lowry. You notice that they don't know when he died? Did anybody know that? Who knows where Henry Berry Lowry is buried? Nancy, did we put that on the board outside? Okay, I want somebody to write on that one. Does anybody know? No. Do you think he died?
Yes.
talk about, let's move to the next census, which is the 1860 census.
Yes, this is Alan Lowry in the 1860 census. 1860 federal census in Robertson County. There was Sinclair, Patrick, James, William, Calvin, and Thomas were on other farms and were in different households during the 1860 census. At that time, Alan Lowry was 63 and a farmer, and he had real estate valued at $1,670, which was an enormous amount of money at that time, and his personal property was worth $650. His wife was Mary Polly, and she was 52 at the time. Stephen was 18, and at 18 he decided he wanted to become a farmer himself. And then there was Henry B., age 16. He did the same thing. Now I'm going to stop and ask all of you, how many of you have heard of Henry Berry Lowry? That's who Henry B. is, and yes, he comes from my family. Thank you. Then there was Perline was 16, and Sally was 9, Anruth was 5, Francis Carter 3.
Okay, you got them all there, Libby. Let me make some comments about this. Now, Alan Lowry was an outstanding citizen in his community. Stature-wise, he was a very tall, handsome person, like Carl. Okay, he's a Lowry. Okay, I can say that, can I, Carl?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Anyway, he was outstanding. They thought he was one of the best farmers in the area. He had 75 acres of land. That's a lot of land back then. He had more than that. You already know that James Lowry gave him more land down there. What happened to the other land? Oh, there was some guy down Norman. You remember him? He's the old guy that was trying to, Otis Norman. He was the guy, I shouldn't say this, Libby.
Go ahead, you already did.
Okay, she tells me what to say. Okay, Otis Norman wanted his land. Henry Berry was supposed to have shot him, right? You remember that story?
Yes.
I can tell that one too, okay?
No, that's all right.
Okay, but anyway, Alan Lowry, well, wait a minute, let me back up a slide. Okay, wait a minute, Liv. Okay, well, we're going to, I can't get him going the right direction. All right, here we
No,
go.
go the other way.
All right, here we go, I got it. Okay, in 1850, he was a carpenter. Did you know he trained all of his children to be carpenters? That was a big thing back then. They had to go over and work in Lumberton. Oh, the town was terrible back then. The Bells were in charge down there. Do you know that?
Yes.
When I turn it?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
That's Bell
I have to check on that every so often. But you notice he was a carpenter and he had a little bit of money. But 10 years later, he's now farming. And he's got money. He's got status in the community. He's a great Lumbee. He's a hero to me. Okay? He stood up to him. Now, the Civil War came about. That was 1861 to 1865, but there was another war going on in Robertson County at the same time. It was called the Lowry War. The people that were in red are the ones that were involved in the Lowry War. The Lowrys were actually in the Civil War and the Lowry War. Allen, 75, a farmer. William, 32, a farmer. They were killed. They were assassinated by a group of men claiming to be the authority. Patrick, is that right there? Okay. Patrick Perry, well, he was out now, he was preaching. So You knew that, didn't you, Nancy? He was doing the preaching now, and he was making arbors and so forth, and bringing in the flock and getting them baptized and christened, baptized, and saved. Okay, that's what he was doing. Calvin was age 30, and Henry Berry was 20, and Stephen was 22, and Thomas was 21, and Sinclair was the oldest one, and he had property, and he was in the county. He was an important person. So the Lowrys were doing pretty good until the Lowry War came. The Lowry War lasted from 1864 to 1874, 10 years. Now, we're going to talk a minute ago, in a minute, I'm going to talk about some books and all that people wrote, and we'll get to that. Let me let Olivia tell you something right here about her people.
Tommy, you know what?
What?
I've lost my place.
Okay, I'll check the screen out and I'll help you.
So, sorry about that.
One thing I have read is that if the census taker categorized someone as mulatto, they made more money. So they had an incentive. They had an incentive to classify someone as mulatto.
Okay, here we go right here, Olivia. Slide 15.
Thank you.
I can look over here, and I can't use that. I got a different machine in my mind.
Okay, shall I go ahead?
Yeah, go
All
ahead.
right, Calvin Lowry was Alan Lowry's son. Calvin Lowry's branch will be the next branch discussed in this presentation. Now, there were two members of the family I'd like to talk about. Calvin Lowry and, of course, Henry Berry Lowry. And how many here have heard of Henry Berry Lowry? A lot. I saw a lot of heads bobbing. There were two members of the family I would like to talk about, Calvin Lowry and Henry Berry Lowry. Calvin and Henry Berry were brothers and also sons of Alan Lowry. Calvin Lowry was the father of Abner Lowry, and Abner Lowry was my grandpa. Theodore Lowry was the son of Abner Lowry, and Theodore Lowry was my father. Henry Berry would be my great-great-uncle.
Let me run through Calvin Lowry's children. There's Henry, Billy, Abner, Annabelle Lowry Spalding, Kennedy, French, Deborah, Edmund, Susan, Nancy, Dr. Fuller, and Mariah. And you'll notice that the one in red happens to be whose grandpa?
That was my grandpa.
Okay. Now, I want to talk about Scuffletown. You ever heard of Scuffletown?
Yes.
How many have not heard of Scuffletown? Okay, there's foreigners, yeah. They're not from Lumbee country. All of you folks know about Scuffletown. What do you know about Scuffletown? Did you know that Scuffletown proper is located a little to the northwest of the center of Robertson County, the center being near Pates, about 15 miles northwest of Lumberton on the Carolina Central Railroad? You know, we hear that damn blame train come by all the time, don't we? Okay. 8 miles northwest of Lumberton on the Carolina Central Railroad is a station called Mossneck. Adolph Dodd and I used to hang out there and decide where to go in Shuffletown.
How about Scuffletown?
Oh, okay. I do make that mistake. Now, you know there's history behind that, don't you?
No.
All right, I'm going to tell you anyway. Okay. All right. This is, you know, it goes from Lumberton all the way down to Wilmington, and from Shoe Hill, which is Maxton, all the way to Charlotte. Right?
Yeah.
Now, you remember James Lowry sold land from Ralph Swamp? Remember, he sold land. He moved down here, let's see, he moved somewhere right down here, I don't know, right in this area, right in here. Okay, that's where the college is right there, you know where that is. This is down there next to Harper's Ferry.
Yeah.
Do you know how Harper's Ferry got its name?
Yes.
Did you know that James Lowry in 1791 moved to the creek. What's the name of that creek again? I keep forgetting that. What?
Drowning Creek.
Drowning Creek. Wonder what that means. The Indians call that Drowning Creek. Okay. Drowning Creek. All right. Drowning Creek. Right in this area. All right. Right in this area. All right. Look at all those places that Henry Berry could hide out. This was, this is Lowry land back here in Back Swamp. You know where Back Swamp is, don't you, Olivia? Okay, most of you do. Some of you shaking your heads, some of you are not. Okay, that's Lowry country. Oh, that's Lowry country back there. Well, some of it's Lowry country. It used to be all Lowry country. Do you know that, Carl? Okay. All right. Now, but James Lowry moved in 1791 down on the river, and what he did is he put an establishment there, and he sold whiskey, and he had a ferry, and he also built a bridge later, and he had a license to run the ferry, and at that time he was required to provide music or entertainment was really what he was providing.
The law said if you charged a man as much as a nickel to transport him and his mule across the river,
absolutely,
you had to entertain him. So
exactly. There you go. Okay, she's on my side. Okay.
They call it a harbor, so that's Harper's.
But wait a minute, he had a mouth harp.
I said a mouth
Now, they don't know what a mouth harp is. I didn't know what a mouth harp is. Oh, I'll tell you right. I'm losing this battle. Okay. Let's try this out. That's Henry Berry Lowry's house.
I never knew that.
Okay. Henry Berry Lowry's house right there. Now, I don't know who that person is up there. Somebody in Lowry land is looking at tombstones. I wonder who that is. That's probably Olivia. So this is what? This is Scuffletown. Is that what that is?
Yeah.
Shuffletown.
Skull.
Let me tell you what. It was claimed by all the other folks other than Lumbees that was Scuffletown.
It is Scuffletown.
Shuffletown. They claim that's where all the Lumbees hung out. Yeah, man.
We still have to pay a Scuffletown tax.
Do you really?
Bar tax.
Watch out now.
If you live in that district.
Does somebody believe that's Henry Berry? How many believe that's Henry Berry?
I don't.
Okay, you're now starting to get educated about Henry Berry. I think, okay, Olivia's teaching me too. I got 9 minutes, wow. 5. Good, yes, okay, let's look through these books right quick. Some say that picture looks like Henry Berry. Some say that looks like Henry Berry. Okay, did you know that they sent a man down from the New York area, New York Herald, named George Apple Townsend to write a book, write articles to send back to their paper, and he published, when it was all over, he published a book in 1872. Mary C. Norman of Elrod didn't like the book, so she wrote another one. Okay. The Lumbee, did you know that there was a Lumbee publishing company in Lumberton before the name Lumbee came about? I met the owner. I can tell you another story. Maybe said I don't have time. Okay, Lumbee Publishing Company bought the rights to the book, and Lumbee Publishing wrote a supplement to the book, which was in favor of what Henry Berry Lowry was, the Robin Hood concepts and all.
Yeah.
Okay, that was all in there. Okay, now to keep going, I don't believe that Mary Norman wrote the book. Okay, I think she had a ghostwriter, and it was probably. You can read it if you've written quite a bit. You can pick it up in a hurry. Okay. Now, some other things is Evans didn't believe it either. James Lowry was from Butte County. He wasn't. He was from Pasquotank, most likely. He was manumitted by his father, James Lowry. That's not true. Manumitted means that it had to do with
Freeing.
freeing slaves. And his father was elected judge. They didn't do that back then. It was, I don't know, okay, it was appointed. Cavalier Stock, no, he was not Cavalier, that's English, that he was Scottish. Now I could keep going, tell you all about that, but there's an important thing here. I'll run right through these books. Maybe tell us quickly about Henry Berry Lowry. That's the punchline right there. That's what we've been building up to.
All right, over the years among the Lumbee people, a variety of stories have been shared or written about what happened to Henry Berry Lowry, a hero of the Lumbee tribe of North Carolina. Some say that he was killed accidentally and buried somewhere in Robeson County in an unmarked grave. Others say that he left the area dressed as a soldier and fled to another state, perhaps Tennessee, or that he went to Texas. Some say that he left and that he took with him a large amount of money that was in a safe that he was said to have stolen. I hope not, because that's my ancestor. With the stolen money, he was supposed to have started a new life. Now, my ancestry is from the family of Henry Berry. My father was the son of Abner Lowry, who was the son of Henry Berry's brother, Calvin Lowry. Their parents were Allen Lowry and Mary Pembroke. That makes Henry Berry my great-great-uncle. Calvin Lowry was saved at the last minute from being shot by the Home Guard with his dad and brothers. Now, as a child, I did not understand why, but later as I read, excuse me, I skipped something here. Henry Berry, I didn't understand why. Later, as I reached my early teen years, I began to hear people outside of the family talk about him. When I asked questions of my father, Mr. Theodore Lowry, he continued to say very little. I had the feeling that there was an unwritten silence about him that either said that Henry Berry did something wrong or that the family was protecting him from something. And as time went by and I found material written about him and what started his activities during the Civil War and what happened during Reconstruction, I began to have a better understanding of the silence under which I had grown up. My family was still very much in the protective mode.
I had an opportunity to talk to D.F. Lowry one Sunday, and we were out behind his house, and I asked him the question. I said, "Where is Henry Berry Lowry buried?" And he said to me, "He could be buried under this ark." Now, what does that tell you? That Henry Berry did not die. He knew where Henry Berry was buried. Libby, what else do you have to say about what happened to Henry Berry?
Well, as a young adult, I asked my dad again, who was born April 5th, 1914, if he knew anything about what happened to Henry Berry. And the following is what my dad said. He said when he was a young boy, he must have been about 7 or 8 years of age, one Sunday afternoon, he was sitting with his father, my grandpa Abner, on the front porch of our house in the Hopewell community. It was either 1921 or 1922. And at that time, a fine-looking dark car pulled into the driveway and stopped in front of the house. That was in front of my grandpa's house. My grandfather remained seated until the car stopped, and when the car door opened, a well-dressed man in a dark suit got out of the car and closed the door. Then my grandpa got up and walked over to the car and greeted the man warmly. And then the two of them walked toward the back of the house. Behind the house were the outdoor kitchen, barns, and some fenced-in animal lots. And my dad, who was telling this story to me, remained on the steps of the porch in the front of the house. And after a relatively short period of time, the two of them came back to the car, and the well-dressed man opened the door, climbed in, started the engine, and drove away as my grandpa stood and watched. When he came back to the porch, he looked at my dad and said, "That was Henry Berry." My father was a man of very few words, and when he spoke, I listened. Even though there are many, many other stories out there, I believe what my dad told me. It is even more believable because my grandpa was of an age to have seen Henry Berry. My father did not tell me where Henry Berry went when he left the area, but the story certainly proves that when he left home, he was alive. I get chills every time. He was alive.
I'll help you, Libby. It's probably believed by most of us that there was a funeral and Henry Berry came by for the funeral. And I have some clues who that might have been, but I better not say.
You want to go to wrap up? Yeah, you need
Okay,
to
gotta
go
wrap
to the
up.
next
Wait a
one.
minute, you're gonna miss a lot of stuff.
But we don't have time. So
I know we don't. I'm gonna get to the part where you read, okay? All right, that, you recognize those folks? Yeah. All right. Recognize that house? I can tell you who all those people are. There's old Croatan Normal School. There's Indian, there we go back to Lumbee and higher education. That's Pembroke, that's the University of North Carolina at Pembroke. I don't fast enough, Olivia. You were working down there. There's the church. There you are out there doing the work. There's your grandpa and grandmas. And here we go with the circuit rider and how you went into Duke University Library and found Chapin's book and cried, and I had to run in there and save you.
He did.
Okay. That's Mr. Evan, the smartest man down there. Let me tell you this. We were talking about communication, telecommunication, Mr. Tibbs. Okay. He told me, Mr. Cabin said that at night down in the Lowry community, from farm to farm, they would holler information. That was the first network I ever saw. Okay, you may know about that too. We've got Pleasant Grove United Methodist Church, and there's all those ministers I've been talking about, and there's Mr. D.F. Lowry had a dream. He dreamed that D.F. Lowry was to build churches and all. He built 5 churches. You know what? He got bootleggers. Oh Lord. He got the bootleggers to pay for them. And some people started criticizing him. And he says, well, the devil's had the money long enough. Okay, that's my hero right there. Hero. Okay, and we could go on. Wait a minute, Olivia. I want you to read that to him.
Okay.
Let me sit down.
This is something that I wanted to be put in place because I knew there would be an audience here, and I want you to know how I feel about it. All of you here are a part of me now. You're part of me now. All of you touched me with your kindness and your love, so enchanted. Your words been kind. Your eyes glow with life. I'm glad you touched me. All of you are part of me now. Now this was written by a Cherokee, but this could have been written by any Indian anywhere, and you wouldn't even have to be an Indian to feel that way. It's just beautiful. And this is the end. And all of those boys you saw sitting there were all first cousins.
Oh, you have to flip it back, maybe. I screwed up.
He's too fast.
That's
You'll recognize some of this crew when you get down there.
sorry.
Keep going, you got a little ways to go.
Yeah.
You went past it.
Here, let's do this. Yeah. Very
Thinking
good.
under pressure.
And all of those boys sitting there are first cousins. They were either my grandpa Abner's daughters, sons, or father, sons of my grandpa. Thank you so much.